Hello, YouTubers. Sometimes the ongoing trade war with China is looked at in fairly narrow terms. Besides tariffs, what options does China have for retaliation against United States aggressiveness? That's what this video is about. As always, I welcome your comments. It's been reported that the Chinese propaganda machine has started. I'm not denying that propaganda exists in China, but it should be noted that American news platforms are the kings of propaganda. Fox News, CNN, MSNBC, etc. put out more propaganda and outright lies than state-run Chinese media. Recently, the People's Daily and Xinhua news agency stated that the United States fights because of greed and arrogance, but that China is fighting to protect its legitimate rights and interests, and concluded by saying that this is a real people's war. The same editorial, in much longer words, also made the point that they have 5,000 years of Chinese history to guide them. Taken together, this indicates that the government is ready to stir up anti-American sentiment and prepare for long-term consequences of any potential actions taken. This news editorial would not have been released without the approval of the Chinese government, after all. What did the editorial mean when it called for a people's war? The thought is that it means hurting the bottom lines of the companies of another country through boycotts or increased government scrutiny on those companies operating in China. American companies may therefore experience more regulatory crackdowns, intensified bureaucratic hassle, increased fines, and other annoyances from the government, in addition to the negative publicity and possible boycotts that a company may receive. Another possible retaliatory action that's been suggested is a clampdown on Chinese citizens traveling to the America for tourism. While this may happen, it's important to note that Chinese tourism to America has already declined due to the trade war. Increased tensions will naturally result in less tourism, though the government may also increase scrutiny on Chinese citizens that want to tour America. Another possible retaliatory action that's been suggested is the devaluation of the yuan. 7 yuan to $1 is the market-determined point where things are bad, and the yuan is very close to that point right now. The increased tensions of the trade war has weakened the yuan. It's only because of China's central bank intervening to offset the depreciation of the yuan that a stronger effect hasn't been felt in their economy. However, if China's bank decides not to intervene as tensions increase, this will lead to the yuan being devalued. China would also likely be accused of trying to devalue their currency, but they're already accused of trying to do that anyway. All things considered, I think it's likely we'll see a devaluation of the yuan if this trade war continues to escalate. This will likely be due to market-driven forces, and the Chinese bank will choose not to intervene. China has a large amount of United States treasuries, the largest in the world. The selling of these treasuries is considered the nuclear option. I've chosen not to include the possible consequences of that happening because it's a bit too speculative and not likely to happen. Long story short, it would be devastating to both the American economy and the Chinese economy, though likely more devastating to the American economy. If this were to happen, it would represent a point of no return. Perhaps what's most important to understand is that China can't match America tit for tat in terms of tariffs, simply because the trade deficit is too uneven. Perhaps equally important is that it would be considered a national shame for China to back down now. This means that China will use other means besides tariffs to protect its interests and defend what it views as an attack on their sovereignty. Since no one really knows how China will respond other than the Chinese president and maybe a handful of other people, we should consider several possible responses. What is clear is that anti-American sentiment is already starting to circulate in Chinese media. This can be laying the groundwork for future actions, but it's also dangerous because it creates a situation that could spin out of control. If trade relations continue to suffer, I think that boycotts on American products and brands, stricter regulations, and tougher scrutiny on American companies operating in China, as well as more anti-American stories in the Chinese media, is likely to happen. Also, a devaluation of the yuan will likely happen if relations continue to suffer. Whether it will happen prior to boycotts and other anti-American actions is unknown, due in part to market-driven forces. The least likely to happen is for China to sell its U.S. treasuries, given its impact to its own economy and the further deterioration of relations that it would bring. Thanks, folks, and if you're looking for accurate reporting and honest analysis, you've come to the right place. Don't forget to subscribe. Thanks once again.